In this video, I'm going to give you a basic introduction into how to use Excel, some basic features that you may want to know. So let's go ahead and begin. First, I'm going to zoom in. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the autofill function. So for instance, let's say if you want to write a list of the weekdays or the days in a week. You can start with Monday, and then you can left click this button at the bottom right and drag it. We can go all the way to Sunday. And then you can expand the width of the column by left clicking the line between A and B and just expand the width of the column. You can also do that with rows too if you need to. Now we can also use the autofill function for the months in a year. So if we start with January, we can left click, drag, and go all the way to December if we want to. Now you can also abbreviate the months as well. So the autofill function will recognize that too. And then you can undo what you did by pressing the undo button. Now notice what happens if you hover over the undo button. You could see the shortcut key, Control Z. So if you press Control Z, it will undo what you did. And if you hover over the redo button, you could see the shortcut key for that, Control Y. And so that would redo the last selection. So now you know how to quickly undo and redo. Just Control Y and Control Z. The next area that we could use the autofill function is if we want to make a list of dates. So today is June 19th, 2018. Now what you can do is you can left click, drag and drop, and the dates will increase by 1. So the days of the year is increasing by 1. Now let's undo it. So this time I'm going to right click with my mouse instead of left clicking it. I'm still going to drag and drop it. But notice that if I right click it, I get this option. So instead of filling days, I can fill weekdays, months, or years. Let's see what happens if I choose fill months. So notice that the months are changing. So we have June, July, August, September, October, and so forth. We could change the years if we want to, 2018, 2019, and things like that. Now you can also copy names. For example, let's say if we have the name Jared. What you could do is use the autofill function to copy it down. Now you can also use the autofill function with numbers. So let's say if you want to write a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So what you want to do is you want to highlight more than one cell so that Excel can recognize the pattern, and then left click, it's going to extend the pattern. So let's say we have an arithmetic sequence of numbers starting with 5, and let's say it goes up by 3. So the next number is 8, 11, and 14. Left click and then drag. As we can see, the pattern has been extended. Now you can also extend a geometric sequence. So let's say if the first number is 2, and then the next number is 4, and then 8, and then 16. So notice that we're not adding by a common number, but instead we're multiplying by a common number. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16. Now, to extend a geometric pattern, you need to right click instead of using the left click button. And then instead of a linear trend, we're going to select a growth trend. And so it follows the pattern. Therefore, those are some ways in which you can use the autofill function. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a table. There's 2 ways in which you can do this. You can go to Insert and Table. If you hover over it, you can see the shortcut key, Control T. So I'm going to use Control T. And then we can select this option, my table has headers, and then press OK. So now we have a table. And a table is very useful for filtering data. For example, if I only want to, it's hard to see what's outside of my recorder, so I'm going to insert a new column. To insert a new column, just hover over the column that you want to push to the right, right click, and then press insert. So that's how you can insert a new column. Now, let's filter out the data in this table. By the way, if you want to insert a row, do the same thing. Right click and insert. So that's how you can insert a new row in Excel. Now, to filter out data, we can press this button and we can deselect everything. And let's say we only want to see Monday and Tuesday. Press OK, and thus you can adjust the data that's in this table. Now let's go back. Let's select everything again. Now we can also filter out the months of the year. So let's choose August, December, January, and July. And so you can do that. Now let's undo. Now we can also filter out numbers as well. So I'm going to deselect everything, go to number filters rather, and you can select greater than, less than. I'm going to choose between. So I want to filter out everything except the numbers between, let's say, 10 and 25. So now you could see that only the data with numbers between 10 and 25 in the arithmetic column is shown. Now let's undo what we just did. So let's press Control Z, and now let's filter out by dates. So let's deselect everything, go to date filters, and you have a lot of options, but let's go to between. And so let's say between August 1st, 2018, and let's say February 1st, 2019. And so here the data has been filtered to those dates. And so that's how you can use the filter feature when you have a table. Now let's talk about how we can remove the table. So select any cell in the table and then press Control A. This will select the entire table. After that, you can go to Design under Table Tools. By the way, if you want to, you can change the color scheme of your table. So you have a lot of different colors in which you can choose from. At the very top in Excel 2016, notice that you have this blank color. I'm going to select that one. And then after that, go to the left where it says Convert to Range. So this will convert the table into a normal range of cells. So let's press that. And now we no longer have the table. And so those are some other things that you can do with Excel. Now sometimes you may want to create a new sheet. And so if you go at the bottom, there's this button here which says New Sheet. And so that's how you can make a new sheet within the same workbook. So at this point, we're going to write the names of a few individuals. So let's say Jason Barr, Lauren Smith, Rachel Larson, Megan Williams, Ricky James, Jared Gonzalez, Karen Garcia, and let's say John Wilson. Now we're going to talk about using the flash fill function. So let's say in column C, we only want to write the first name of the individual. So let's start with Jason. Now what you need to do is you need to right click and extend. And then you can select this option, Flash Fill, and it's automatically going to look at the column on the left and simply input just the first names of the individuals. Now we can also do the same with the last names of those individuals. So let's write the first last name, bar, and then right click, choose Flash Fill. And so that's one way in which you could use the Flash Fill feature. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is moving rows and columns. So let's say if we want to move column B to the right. Once you highlight the column, hold down the Shift key, and then move the cursor until you see those 4 arrows. Once you see it, left click, hold, and drag. So you can put it anywhere you want to. And so that's how you could move a column in Excel. Now, if you wish to move 2 columns, highlight 2 columns, hold down the Shift key, and wait until you see those 4 arrows. And then we can move it all the way to that side. Now, we could do the same thing with rows. So let's say if we want to move Karen Garcia to the top. Hold down the Shift key, and then move the cursor with your mouse until you see the 4 arrows, and then drag it to the top. And let's do the same with 2 rows. So let's highlight 2 rows, hold down the Shift key, left click, drag and move it to where you want to move it. And so that's how you could move rows and columns in Excel. Another function that's useful is the transpose feature of Excel. So let's say if we highlight the first name column, let me select everything, and then what you can do is right click anywhere. Actually, first you have to copy it. So you can press Control C to copy, and then right click somewhere, let's say at cell F2, and then select Paste Special. So once you select Paste Special, you'll see this option at the bottom to transpose that data. So it's going to convert the data, which is in a vertical format, into a horizontal format. And so you could see it here. And so that's how you could use the transpose function. Now let's say if we have some numbers, let's say 12, 15, 24, 17, and 19. We can also convert horizontal data back into vertical data. So let's select everything and then Control C, or you can go to Home, Copy, and then let's paste it onto cell F6. So right click, Paste Special, and then select Transpose. So that's how you can convert horizontal data to vertical data. Now, sometimes you may want to save your work. To do that, you can go to File and then select Save As, or you can select the Save option, and that's one way in which you can do that. Now, another way is pressing Control S, and it's a quick way to access the Save As feature. Now, sometimes you may want to print your work, so you can press Control P to print the worksheet. Other times you may want to create a new workbook. You can press Control N and you'll have a new workbook generated. So those are some shortcut keys that can help make your life easier when dealing with Excel. Now the next thing we need to talk about is sorting data. So sometimes you may want to put the names in alphabetical order. So what you can do is you can right click and then go to sort. So let's sort it from A to Z. Now let's continue with the current selection. So as you can see, the names have been sorted from A to Z. I'm going to undo it. Let's insert a new column here. Now let's do the same thing with this column. So notice the name Karen Garcia in cells D3 and E3. And let's select the Z to A this time. I'm going to continue with the current selection. Notice that only column D has been sorted, but not E. So now the names no longer match. So instead of having Karen Garcia, which we had before, now we have Karen Williams. So let's undo it. Right click. So this time, what I'm going to do is, I'm still going to sort it the same way, but I'm going to choose this selection, expand the selection, and it's automatically going to change column E. So it's still sorted from Z to A, but the names still match. So we still have the name Karen Garcia. So that's how you can sort data. Now let's say in column E we have the age of the individuals. Let's say Karen is 25, Jason is 29, Lauren is 32, Rachel is 18, Megan is 21, Ricky is 37, Jared is 45, let's say John is 26. So you can also sort by numbers as well. So let's put it from smallest to largest. And so we can do that as well. Now sometimes you may want to combine the information in two columns into a single column. So in column F, we're going to combine the informations in columns C and D. So one way in which we can do so is using the concatenate function. So first we need to select text 1, as you can see here. Let's highlight the information in cell C3 and then press comma, and then we can highlight the information in D3. If we do it this way, notice that there's no space in between the words Karen and Garcia. So let's double click and go back to it. So after C3, what we're going to do is put a space. So you need to put the space in quotations. After you put the quotation mark, space, and then put another one, and then press comma. And now we can type in D3. So now we have a space between the names Karen and Garcia. Now we can use the autofill function to basically extend what we have. And so that's one way in which you can combine the text in two different columns into a single column. Another way in which we can achieve the same result is by using the text join function. So let's say we want to combine the names and the age. So we wish to combine columns C, D, and E all together. So you can use the concatenate function to do this as well, but this time I'm going to use the text join function. So first we need to choose a delimiter. I hope I said that right, delimiter. So our delimiter is going to be a space. Let's put that in quotations. And then I'm going to select true to ignore the empty cells. And then text 1, that's going to be the information in cell C3. And then we'll press comma. Text 2 will be D3, comma, and then text 3, E3. So as you can see, if you have a lot of columns that you wish to combine, the text join function is very useful because you can keep going text 4, text 5, text 6, and it gets easier at this point. So now let's close the parentheses and then press enter. Now, what I'm going to do is, actually I'll leave it like that. I was going to change something, but let's not worry about it. So now let's use the autofill function. And so that's how you can combine multiple columns into a single column using the text join function. Now let's say if we have this column with the item numbers and we want to extract certain text in this column and put it into these three columns. So one way in which we can do that is by using the flash fill function as we did before. So I'm going to right click, extend, and then select flash fill. So you can do it that way. Another way in which you can do that is by using the left function. So if you type in equal left, Now we're going to choose this text in cell B3, and then starting from the left, we only want to select the first 4 characters. So the first 4 characters represents the location of the item number, let's say in a warehouse. The next 3 is the abbreviation for the company, and the last 2 is for the size of the part or the item. Now we can use the autofill to extend it. And so that's another way in which you can break down a text string into multiple parts. Now let's do the same for company. So we can type in ABC and then right click, flash fill. So that's going to work. But to learn new things, let's use the mid function. So we're going to choose text B3. Now ABC, the letter A, starts at the 6th position from the left, starting from the left. And the number of characters that we want to extract from that text string is only 3. And then use the autofill feature to extend it. Now for the last one, we're going to use the right function. So as you can see, it says it returns the specified number of characters from the end of a text string. So let's choose cell B3 like before, and starting from the right, we only need the first 2 characters. And so we get the number 15. Let's do that again. And now we can just use the autofill function to copy everything else in this column. And so that's it for this particular section. That's how you can extract text from cells using the left, the mid, and the right functions. Now let's put some names in this column. And let's say the names are not edited properly. And let me write a few more. So just hang on, this will take a little time. And let's do one more. Okay, sometimes you may need to basically fix the text that you have here. So one function that you could use is the lowercase function. So if you type in equal lower, it converts all letters in a text string to lowercase. So let's highlight this cell. And as you can see, we get everything in the lowercase format. And then you could extend it if you want to. Now the next one that you want to be familiar with is the uppercase function. It converts a text string to all uppercase letters. And then you could use the autofill function to extend it. Now lastly, we have the proper function. And this function, it converts the first letter in each word to uppercase. Everything else will be in the lowercase format. And so those are some other useful functions within Excel that you could use. Now let's talk about some other things that we can do here. So we can also bold the text. If we go to Home and then select Bold, you can bold it. Or you can press Control B, and it's a quick way to bold the text in a cell. If you press Control B again, it's going to remove that. Now there's some other things we could do. We can italicize it, we can underline it, and so the shortcut keys for that, to italicize, all you gotta do is press Control I, and if you press it again, it will undo it. So let's say if we wish to underline XYZ, the shortcut key for that is Control U, and you can put an underline. Or if you want to put a strike through, you can press Control 5 and you can put a strike through in the text. So let's do that again. Control 5 and there you go. Now let's say if we type in John, let's say Williams. If I press enter, it's automatically going to take me to the next cell. But sometimes I may want to insert a line break. One way in which you can do that is you can press Alt, A-L-T, and then the enter button. And now you can put his last name beneath his first name. And so once again, that's A-L-T, Alt, and then enter. That's the shortcut key to insert a line break. So let's say for Jason Smith, if we wish to do that. So Alt, and then enter, and then you could type his last name. So that's how you can insert a line break in Excel. Now, if you wish to select everything, you can press Control A. For instance, if we select a cell outside of any table or any data, and you press Control A, it will select the entire worksheet. Now let's say if we select a cell within this data. If we press Control A, it will select all of the data that's in that region. Likewise, if we do it here, Control A, it'll select all the continuous data in that region. It won't select this data because there's an empty cell between it. So Control A is the select all option. Now sometimes you may wish to copy and paste. The shortcut key to copy is Control C, and to paste it, it's Control V. So you can paste it anywhere you want to, just by pressing Control V. Now, sometimes you may need to quickly move from one portion of the sheet to the other. So let's select a cell outside of any data. If you press Control and the down arrow key, it'll take you to the very bottom of the worksheet. If you hold down the Control button and press the right arrow key, it'll take you all the way to the right. And then let's press Control and up, and then Control and then the left arrow key. Now, let's say if we highlighted a cell within a certain table set or data set. If we press Control down, it'll go to the bottom of that data. Let's get rid of this. And then if we press Control to the right, Control up, Control left, so we can quickly move from one end of a data set to the other end. Another feature that's useful in Excel is the find and replace function. So if you press Control F, you will open the Find tab. And let's say if we want to find the word Jason. So let's select Find All. And we could see here's the first one that's in cell G3, which is here. Or we can highlight the second one, which is in cell G9. And so that's one way in which you can find certain text in Excel. Now if we go to replace, we can replace Jason with, let's say, Ricky. And let's select replace all. So everywhere we saw the word Jason, now it's been replaced with Ricky. So that's how you could use the find and replace feature. So Control F is to open the Find tab, and Control H opens the Replace tab. You can also access it by going to Home, and then you can go to Find or Replace. Now let's say if we have a huge data file like what we have here, a lot of information. And sometimes when you scroll down, you may want to know which column you're looking at, whether it's the address column, it's the city column, or the last name, and things like that. So something that you can do, if you go to View and select Freeze Panes, you could freeze the top row. And so what happens is, as you scroll down, notice that the top row remains the same. So you can easily see which column corresponds to the address, which one is for the state, which one is for the zip code, and things like that, if you have a huge data file. Now to remove it, simply select Unfreeze Panes. Now, you can also freeze the first column. So as you scroll to the right, you can always see the name of the individual. Now, what if we want to freeze both the first row and the first column? What do we need to do? What you want to do is highlight cell B2, and you want to select View and just freeze panes. What's going to happen is it's going to freeze the row that's above the highlighted cell and the column that's to the left. So if we scroll down, we can see that the top row has been frozen. If we scroll to the right, the first column has been frozen as well. Now let's say if we want to freeze the top row and the first two columns on the left. Which cell should we highlight? We need to highlight cell C2. And then let's go to View, Freeze Panes. So now we can see that the first row is frozen. And if we scroll to the right, we can see the first two columns is frozen. And so that's how you can basically freeze rows and columns using freeze panes in Excel. Now let's focus on numbers and basically using Excel with math. So let's say here we have data for column 1 and numbers for column 2. Now let's write up a few numbers. Let's say 12, 17, 9, 26, 17, 34, and one more, let's say 45. And over here we have the numbers 18, 5, 27, 46, 27, 83, and 52. Now sometimes you may wish to calculate the sum of these numbers. To do so, you can type in equal sum parentheses and highlight the numbers that you wish to find a total for, and then close the parentheses. And so the sum of these 7 numbers is 160. Now you could use the autofill feature to extend that pattern. So the sum of these numbers is 258. Now there are some other ways in which you can add numbers. For example, you can type in equal sum and then simply write the numbers you wish to add. So if we want to add 20 and 30, it's 50. Or if we wish to add 3 numbers, we could say 30, 40, and 50. So the average of, the sum of those 3 numbers is 120. You can also do it this way, equal 30 plus 40 plus 50. You don't have to write sum. So those are some other ways in which you can do a quick, simple addition. Now let's talk about the average function. Sometimes you may wish to calculate the average or the mean of a data set. And so you could use the average function. You can type in equal average and then select the numbers that you want to find the average of. So for the first column, the average is 22.86 if you round it to the nearest hundredths place. And for the second column, the average of these 7 numbers is 36.8571. And if you want to, you can basically format the cells. So if you want to, you can round it to, let's say, the 10th place or the 100th place. All you need to do is right click and then format cells. You could change it to whatever you want to. Now sometimes you may be dealing with statistics and you wish to use Excel. So some other functions in statistics that might be useful is the median, the mean, and the mode. The mean is the same as the average, so we've covered that already, but let's talk about the mode. So you can type in equal mode and select the column that you want to focus on. So the mode for this column is 17 because that is the number that appears most frequently. If you want to highlight 2 cells at once, hold the control key and so you can highlight multiple cells as well. Now using the flash fill, we can see that the mode for the second column is 27 because that number has the highest frequency. It appears the most in this column. Next, we can calculate the median. The median is basically the number in the middle. So for column 1, the middle number is 17. For column 2, it's 27 again. Now, let's take the information in column 1. Well, actually, let's change this number. Let's say if we made that 85. Now the median changes. The middle number is 26, and everything is updated. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control C, copy that, and then right click, paste special, and let's transpose the data into a horizontal format. Actually, before I do that, let's sort it. So right click, let's sort it from smallest to largest. And then I'm going to copy it, pressing Control C, and then right click, paste special, and now let's transpose it. So one way in which you can identify the median is basically look at these numbers and pick the middle number. So sometimes you can basically just eliminate the numbers at the end. So pressing Control 5, we can use the strike through feature to eliminate the numbers until we get the number in the middle. And so you can clearly see that the median for these 7 numbers is 26. Now, let's talk about some other things that we can calculate. When dealing with statistics, you may also wish to calculate the standard deviation. So you can type in STDEV, and you can use the population standard deviation or the sample standard deviation. So I'm going to press .s to determine the sample standard deviation and select the numbers that you wish to select. And so that's a simple and quick way to calculate the standard deviation. If you're doing it by hand, it's going to take a lot of time, especially if you have a lot of numbers. And so this feature in Excel is very, very useful when calculating this thing. Now we can also calculate variance. You can do population variance or sample variance. So I'm going to choose sample again. And that's it. So now you know how to use Excel to calculate the variance and the standard deviation of a sample. Now at other times, you may wish to calculate the range of a data set. To do that, first you want to determine the maximum value and then the minimum value. So to find the maximum value, just type in equal max. As you can see, it returns the largest value in a set of values. So we can clearly see that the largest value is 85 in column 1. In column 2, the largest one is 83. Now the minimum function is very similar. It returns the smallest value in a data set. And so the lowest value for that one is 12. For the second one, it's going to be 5. Now to calculate the range, we simply need to take the difference between the maximum value, which is found in cell B13, subtracted by the minimum value, which is found in cell B14. And so that's 73. And here it's 78. And so those are some ways in which you can calculate the range of a data set. Now you want to be familiar with the basic operations in Excel. And this is math operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Now sometimes you may want to automatically adjust the column width. And so what you could do is basically press this button. It highlights all the cells, and then once you go over here you can just double click, and automatically it's going to resize all of the columns so that you could see everything. Now for addition, we're going to add the data in column 1 with the data in column 2. So I'm going to type in equal B3 plus C3. And then what you could do is just use the autofill feature to extend that pattern. And so we have 12 plus 18, that's 30. 17 plus 5 is 22. 45 plus 83, that's 128, and so forth. Now let's move on to subtraction. So let's subtract column 1 by column 2. So cell B3 minus cell C3. And so we can see it's -6. And I still have the strike through feature, so let's highlight this and type in Control 5 just to get rid of the strike through. And now let's extend the pattern. And so we can see that 34 minus 27 is 7. 26 minus 46 is -20. Now for multiplication, we can type in equal the information found in B3 times that in C3. To get that multiplication symbol, you need to type in Shift 8 and it will bring it up. Now you can multiply any other number, for example, like 5 times 5. You can type in equal 5 and then Shift 8 times 5, which is 25, or 8 times 9, 72. And so that's a quick way in which you can do multiplication in Excel. Now, if you wish to do division, you could use the backslash symbol. For example, 48 divided by 6 is 8. And so that's how you can do division. In this case, we're going to divide the information in cell B3 by that in C3. And so we'll get those numbers. So that's basically it for some basic math operations that you could use in Excel. Now, something I want to show you, if you go to View, actually not that, let's go to Formulas. If you go to Formulas, you can select this option, Show Formulas. And the shortcut key, as you can see here, Control and tilde key, if you press that, you can show all the formulas that you have. So here, equals B3 plus C3. Here, B6 minus C6. And then if you press the Control tilde key, which is to the left of the number 1 key on your keyboard, you can switch back. And so that's very useful if you need to check the formulas that you have in your Excel worksheet. Now I know the tilde key looked very small in the video that you're currently watching, and so I'm going to draw it for you. To draw something, just go to Draw, and then you can select the color. So I'm going to go with red, and you could basically choose how thick you want the pen to be. So hopefully that is a good enough size. So let me get my drawing pen. And so you want to press the Control button. In addition to that, you want to press the tilde key, which looks like a squiggly sine wave that's very close or to the left of the number 1 key in your keyboard. And so that's the shortcut key to show all the formulas that you have in your Excel worksheet. And now you know how to draw things in Excel. So now I'm going to clear away everything. Let's press Control A, and then let's press the delete button. And to get rid of this, I'm just going to delete this column. Right click and then delete. Now sometimes you may want to use other functions in Excel. Let's say if you want to find out what is 5 raised to the third power. You can type in equal 5 and then shift 6. That'll put the arrow button. So this means 5 and then raised to the third power. So that's 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. Or let's say if you want to type in 6 squared, that's 36. Or let's say 9 raised to the fourth power, that's multiplying 9 4 times, that's 6,561. And so that's how you could raise a number to another power. You can also use the power function. So let's say if we want to do 5 to the third power. So the base is 5, and we're raising it to the third power, so that's 125. Or we can do 6 to the second power, that's 36. Or, like we did before, 9 to the fourth power, which is 6,561. Now let's go to draw. And let's say if you want to find this answer, what is e raised to the second power? And what is e raised to the third power? Now e is a number. It's basically 2.718 with more numbers added to it. But to raise something to, let's say, with e as the base, you can type in equal exp, so it returns e raised to the power of a given number, and then you just put that number. So e squared is 7.38906. And if you want to find e to the third power, it's going to be 20.0855. And so that's how you could find the value of these things. Now the next one we're going to talk about is the square root function. So let's go to draw. Let's say if you want to find the square root of 36 or the square root of 49. You know the square root of 36 is 6 because 6 times 6 is 36. And the square root of 49 is 7 because 7 times 7 is 49. But to do that in Excel, you need to type in equal sqrt and then just type in the number. So the square root of 36 is 6 and the square root of 49 is 7. Let's say we want to find the square root of 144. So that's going to be 12. 12 times 12 is 144. Now let's get rid of these things. You can highlight it and then press the delete button. So let's say if you want to calculate log of 25. Or let's say if you want to evaluate log base 4 of 16. How can you do so? So let's start with log 25. When there's no base, it's always assumed to be a 10. So you can type in equal and then log. Then you write the number is 25, and then the base is 10. So log 25 is 1.39794. Now let's do the other one, log base 4 of 16. To do that in your head, you have to ask yourself, 4 raised to the what power is 16? 4 squared is 16, so the answer is going to be 2. 4 to the second power is 16 because you need to multiply 2 4s to get to 16. To get that answer, we can type in equal log, the number is 16, the base is 4, and so we get 2. And so that's a simple way in which you can evaluate logs in Excel. Now let's delete this again. Now let's say if we wish to evaluate the natural log of 3.1. What's going to be the answer here? To find out, we need to type in equal ln, so that's the natural log function, and then 3.1. And so it's 1.1314021. Now, the natural log function, it's basically the inverse of the exponential e function. So if we type in EXP and then 1.1314021, notice it gives us 3.1. So this natural log is about 1.1314 if you round it, and e to the 1.1314 is approximately 3.1. And so e and natural logs, they're inverses of each other, as you can see there. Now let's go to a new worksheet and let's zoom in. Now let's say if you want to calculate the least common multiple of two numbers. Let's do something simple like 4 and 6. Let me put this in a different column. So this is the first number, let's call it number 1, and this is the second number. So multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, and so forth. Multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, and 24. So as you can see, the least common multiple is 12. Now, to find this, you can type in equal LCM, and the first number is 4, and the second number is 6. And so it gives you 12. Now let's say if we want to calculate the LCM, or the least common multiple of three numbers. Now to do this mentally, it's going to take more work, but with Excel, it makes the process very easy. Let's say we want to find the LCM of 2, 3, and 5. So I'm going to write the pattern here. Multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8. And then I'm going to extend the pattern using the autofill feature. Now multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, and so forth. And multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, and things like that. So we could see that the least common multiple, the multiple that appears the first for all three, or the multiple with the lowest value, is 30. So that's the LCM of 2, 3, and 5. If we type in equal LCM, we can put three numbers. 2, that's the first number, the second number is 3, and the third number is 5. If we want to add a fourth number, you can do so. So you can find the LCM of as many numbers as you want to using Excel. And so we get 30. And so that's another function that's very useful in Excel if you're taking a pre-algebra or an algebra course. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is converting fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Now if you have access to a calculator, it's very easy to convert a fraction to a decimal. You simply need to do simple division. So for example, 2/5, all you got to type in is equal 2 over 5 in Excel or in a calculator, and it's going to give you 0.4. So that's a simple way in which you can convert a fraction to a decimal. So let's say if we have 4/5, that's, well, what just happened there? It's 0.8. Maybe this cell wasn't formatted correctly. Or let's say 3/5, that's 0.6. Now, it's harder to convert a decimal back into a fraction. Some calculators will do this, but not all calculators will have this ability. But to do it in Excel, here's what you can do. Let's start with 0.4. We know that's 2 over 5. So if you type in 0.4 somewhere, all you need to do is right-click, go to Format Cells, and then select Fraction. And you have the option up to 1 digit, up to 2 digits, up to 3. This is the limitation though. So if you have a fraction that has 4 digits, Excel is not going to work here. But for something as simple as this, it will work. So 2/5 is 0.4. If we want to convert, let's say 0.6 to a fraction, right click, Format Cells, and then Fraction up to 3 digits. Let me move this up and then press OK. So that's 3/5. Now let's say if we have a decimal number with 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. So we can do the same thing. Format cells, fraction, and then so forth. So 0.25 is 1/4. Now let's try some other examples like 0.375. So this will work too. And so that's 3/8 as a fraction. Or let's say 0.216. So that should be a harder example. And that's 27/125. So now you know how to convert a decimal into a fraction in Excel. Now let's press Control A and delete. So now what we're going to talk about is Roman numerals and how to use it in Excel. So M represents 1,000, D is 500, C for century, that's 100. Think of M as a millennium, that's 1,000. L represents 50, X is 10, V is 5, I is 1. So for instance, let's say if we have XVI, that's 10 plus 5 plus 1, that's 16. Or if we have LXV, that's 50 plus 10 plus 5, that's 65. Or if we have VI, that's 5 plus 1, that's 6. IV, it's actually subtraction instead of addition, so that's 5 minus 1, that's 4. Now, to get these answers in Excel, here's what you can do. So you can type in equal Roman. This will convert an Arabic numeral to Roman as text. So let's say if we have the number 16. So that's XVI, which is what we have here. Or if we have the number 65. So that's LXV, as we could see here. Or if we have, let's say, 6, that's VI. Or if we have 4, that's IV. Now, if you ever want to convert, let's say, a year into a Roman numeral, let's say the year 1865. Just type in equal Roman 1865, and there you go. So M is 1,000, D is 500, that's 1,500, C is 100, so that's 1,600, 1,700, 1,800, L is 50, so 1850 plus 10, 1860 plus 5, 1865. Now let's talk about going backwards. So let's say if we want to convert a Roman numeral back into a number. What you need to do is type in equal Arabic, and then you want to type in the Roman numeral. So if we type in XVI, as you can see, there's an issue. So because this is a text, we need to put it within quotation marks. And now it works. So XVI corresponds to 16. If we type in Arabic, equals Arabic, that is, and then quotation marks, LXV, we get 65. And let's do the same in that one. So let's say if we have, I'm going to change it up a bit, MDC, well, let's use the exact same one. What you can do is just reference that cell. And so that can also work. So we get the same year, 1865, as you can see here. And so that's how you can convert a number into a Roman numeral and convert a Roman numeral back into a number using the Roman function and the Arabic function. Now let's go ahead and delete this sheet. So I'm going to right click and press delete. And now let's add a new sheet. Okay, that's too much. Now let's say if we wish to calculate 5 factorial. How can we use Excel to evaluate 5 factorial? So 5 factorial is basically 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. You start with this number, and multiply all of the integers until you reach 1. So one way in which we can do that is simply type in equal 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And so the answer is 120. Another way in which we can do that is by using the factorial function. So if you type in equal fact, F-A-C-T, and then input the number that you want to find the factorial of, you can do it that way as well. So let's say if we wish to calculate 8 factorial, just type in equal fact and then 8. And so 8 factorial is that number. So if we typed in equal 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 and then times 2 times 1, it's 40,320. So that's how you can evaluate factorials in Excel. Now there's some other things that I do want to talk about. And let's talk about the count function. So let's say if we have some cells that contain numbers, let's say some are blank, and some contain words. And some will have words and numbers. Now the first function we're going to talk about is the count function. If you type in equal count, this will count the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So if we highlight cell B2 all the way to cell B14, we're going to get 4, because 4 of these cells contain numbers only. So that's the count function. You can count cells that contain a numerical value. Now the next one is the count A function. And this function counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So let's highlight the same range, and this time we get 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that's not 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that function, the count A function, counts cells that contain numbers or letters. The last one that I want to talk about in this series is the count blank function. And so this counts the number of empty cells in a specified range of cells. So from B2 to B14, as you can see, we have a total of 3 blank cells. And so those are some count functions that you could use. There's some other ones, but I just want to go over those 3 for now. Now, for those of you who might be dealing with number systems like binary numbers, decimal numbers, hexadecimal, octal, you might find these functions very helpful. So let's say if we want to convert a decimal number into a binary number, we could use the base function. So equal base, let's say the number is 20, and we want to convert that to a binary number, which is in the base 2 system, because binary numbers could be only 2 options, 0 or 1, on or off. 1 is like on, 0 is like off. So if you type in that, 20 corresponds to the binary number 10100. Now to convert it backwards, or back to a decimal number, you can type in equal decimal, and then type in the binary number 10100, and this is in the base 2 system, and that will give you 20. Another way in which you can do the same thing is you can type in equal decimal to binary. You can also convert it from decimal to hexadecimal or decimal to octal. But let's use decimal to binary and just type in the number 20. And so we get the same binary number. Or we can use equal binary to decimal, and we can type in 10100, and that will give us 20. So that's how you could use Excel to convert from one number system into another. Now let's press Control A, select all, delete. Now let's say if we have a lab report and we want to make an XY scatter chart. And we have some data. Let's say when X is 0.2, Y is 4.5. When X is 0.6, Y is 20.5. When X is 0.8, let's say Y is 28.5. And when X is 1.6, let's say Y is 60.5. Now to make a line graph, or basically an XY scatter chart, we can highlight these values and then go to Insert, and we can choose an XY scatter chart. It can be based on points, or you can connect the points with a line. So let's choose this option, and we could resize the chart, and we can adjust the chart title. Let's call it Scatter Chart. Now we can also basically adjust the chart elements. So we can add the axis titles, so let's call this the Y values, and let's call this the X values. Now there's a lot of things that we can do with this chart. We can add a legend if we want to, and we can place that legend at the right, at the top, left, bottom. We can add data labels, so we can put the numbers, and we can put it at the center, to the left, right, above, and things like that. But what I'm going to focus on is the trend line. If you click this button at the right, or this arrow, and select more options, notice what you can do. You can display the equation that is represented by this graph on a chart, and you can also display the R value, or the R squared value, which is associated with the correlation coefficient. Now let's say if we want to find the Y value when X is 3.8. How can we do so? Well, for one thing, we could use the equation on a graph, which is 40x minus 3.5. So if we replace x with 3.8, so it's going to be 40 times 3.8 minus 3.5. And so that gives us this value, 148.5. You can also get that value using the forecast function. So if we type in equal forecast, now there's different options. We have the exponential forecast function and the linear. If you're not sure, just pick forecast, and it's gonna make it work for you. So we're gonna forecast it based on the X value that's in cell B7, and then press comma. Now we need to select the known Y values, which represent the values in that range, and then the known X values. You can left click to select a column. And so notice that it gives us the same answer. So we can predict the Y value given any other X value from this data using the equation or the forecast function. Now there's some other things that we can do. Now the equation that we have, which is Y equals 40x minus 3.5, that is in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. So m, the number in front of x, is 40. So the slope is 40, and b, which is the negative 3.5, that's the y-intercept. Another way in which you can get those values, you can type in equal slope, and you could select the known y values, and then using you can left click and select the known x values. And so this will give you the same slope of 40. To find the y-intercept, you can type in equal intercept, and then just like before, select the known y values, and then using the left button of the mouse, select the known x values. And so the y-intercept is negative 3.5. Now to get the r value, you can type in equal correl. It returns the correlation coefficient between two data sets, and then select array 1 and then array 2. And so you get 1. If you square it, you'll get this r squared value, which is 1 as well. So this is r squared. But that's how you can find the correlation coefficient. And the r value is between 0 and 1. If you get a value of 1, that means you have a perfect linear function. If you get a value of 0, that means there is no correlation between x and y. So if you get like 0.98, that means that you have a very good linear function. It's not perfect, but for the most part, it's linear. Now let's go ahead and delete this sheet. Let's open up a new one. So this time we're going to make a bar graph. So let's say we have the quarter on the left side, and on the right side, the sales. Now let's say this is Q1, and let's use the autofill feature to go up to Q4. So in the first quarter, let's say the sales are just 4,200. And for the second quarter, we're going to say the sales for a certain agent is 3,700. And then for quarter 3, it's 5,600. And then for the last quarter, it's 4,800. So let's select this data, and let's go to Insert, and then you can select recommended charts if you want to. You can see the different charts that you can make. So we have a column chart, a field map, but that's not really useful here, a line chart, a pie chart, and things like that. So what I want to do is I'm going to choose this option, and I want a column chart. And so here we can see we have a visual representation of the sales of this particular sales agent by quarter. And if we want to, we can change the style of the graph. So we can make it look like this if we want to. You can adjust it. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do. So let's go back to our original picture. You can also change the color too. So if you don't want blue, you can change the color here. Now, if you don't find the color that you want, you can go to Page Layout, and then you can access more colors here. Let's go with this color. And then you know what to do here. You can adjust the axis titles, the data table, the legend, add a trend line. So you just have to experiment, and you'll learn as you go. So that's how you can create a column chart in Excel. Now the next type of graph that we're going to make is a bar graph. So let's say we have the name of a certain sales agent and the revenue generated by such sales agent. So let's say we have John, Kelly, Susan, Mary, and Arnold. So let's say John generates 32,000 in revenue, Kelly does 25,000, Susan does let's say 63,000, Mary produced let's say 48,000, and Arnold 57. So let's highlight the information and then click Insert, and let's go to what we did before. And this time, instead of a column chart, let's select a bar chart. And so here you can visually see that Susan produced the greatest sales. And Kelly, she had the lowest in according to this data. So that's how you can create a bar graph using Excel. And everything else is the same. You can adjust the chart style just like we did before. Now let's talk about making a line graph. So let's say if we have the month and we have the sales. So let's start with January, and let's use the autofill function to extend it to December. Now, instead of writing some numbers for the cells, we're going to use a function, something called ran between. And so this is going to return a random number between the numbers you specify. So the lowest number, I'm going to say it's, let's say 10,000. And the highest number we'll go with 98,000. And then let's autofill it. And here we go. So we automatically have some sales for this, for the months of the year. And then let's go to Insert, and let's select a line chart. And so you have you can see the data visually. So the sales were the highest in the month of April, about 93,900, and in the month of March, it was at an all-time low. And so that's how you could use a line graph in Excel. Now the next type of graph that we're going to talk about is a map chart. So let's put the state of, let's say, the continental United States, and we're going to write out the population, or just put some numbers for the population of those states. So let's select California, New York, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, let's say Alabama, and Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Idaho, Kansas, and that'll be it. And let's use the ran between function to randomly generate some numbers. So let's say from a low of 5 million to a high of, let's say, 60 million. If you ever get an error message like this, you may need to increase the width of the column. Now let's use the autofill function, and let's right click, go to Format Cells, and let's make this just a general number. Well, let's see if we can put some commas between those numbers. So let's select this and put it to 0 decimal places. Okay, now it looks better. So let's just use the auto fit column width feature of Excel. So now we can create a map chart. So let's go to Insert and then Maps. So now we have a map chart. And so based on this data, we see that Nevada has the highest population. Of course, this is not accurate in real life because we use the ran between function, but the more darker color represents a higher population. The lighter color represents a lower population. Now let's see what we can do here. So we can choose a different type of, we can change the style of the map. We can adjust the color. Let's go to page layout. Let's go for a bluish color. And now let's go to data labels. And let's select more data label options. So we can display the category name, we could display the value, which is the population, but I'm going to display the category name so you can see the states. And based on the color, you can, basically get a visual estimation of the population. If you want to, you can take out the legend key too. Or you could just put it somewhere else. So let's put it at the top. And so that's how you can create a map chart in Excel. Now let's make one more chart. This time it's going to be a pie chart. So we're going to have the department and basically the funds allocated to each department. So let's double click. And the first department will be the marketing department, and then we'll have the research department, and then payroll, and also let's say purchasing, and that'll be it. Now let's say for the marketing department, we have 75,000 allocated to that on a monthly basis, and for research, let's say 125,000. Payroll, we'll say it's 90,000, and purchasing, we'll go with 80,000. So let's go to Insert, and if we go to Recommended Charts, at the top, you can select All Charts, and you can see everything. So let's click Pie Charts. So you can make a pie chart, or you can make like a donut chart if you want to. Or you can make a 3D pie chart, which I'm going to go with that. Now let's change the color of the pie chart. Here everything looks almost the same, so let's go to Page Layout. And let's go with that color. Now let's add data labels. Let's see. We could put it in the center, inside, best fit, data callout. I'm going to go with that. And let's resize the pie chart. So that's how you could make a 3D pie chart in Excel. Now the next feature in Excel that's useful are the calendars. If you go to File, and then if you go to New, notice that you have a lot of templates that you can use. So these are pre-made templates, and we can go to, let's say, an academic calendar, and any year, 1 month calendar. Let's choose that one. So let's click Create, and let me just move this over here so you could see everything. So with this calendar, the year is already selected, and the current month is June. So let's change it. And the calendar is presented where Monday is the first day of the week, but we can change that. So we can make Sunday the first day of the week if we want to. And you can press Control P to print the calendar. And so that's another useful feature that Excel has. So it already has these pre-made calendars that you could use. Now let's go back to File, New, and if you type in calendars, you can get a lot of other calendars that you can choose from. So let's select this one. Let's see how that looks. So we can press Control P, and we can just print this calendar. And so those are some calendars that you could use if you need it. By the way, you can select different months by changing the sheet. So there's a lot of pre-made calendars that you could use here. Now let's focus on the data on the left side. Let's say if we want to find the sum of all of the blue marbles. What function can we use to do that? Now right now we can simply just identify all of the blue cells and add up the three numbers. So it's going to be 120 plus 174 plus 127. But now let's say if we have a huge data set. It might be difficult to identify all of the blue marbles. Let's say if this was like a list of 200 cells. So what other function can help us to identify the sum of a certain element in this range? So the function that we need is the SUMIF function. So I'm going to type in blue here. And let's type in equals SUMIF. And as you can see here, it adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So first we need to select the range of cells that we're analyzing. And so that's going to be the color of the marbles. And then we're going to select cell B15 as the criteria. So whatever we put in that cell is going to sum those marbles. And then the sum range. So these are the range that has the numerical values in it. So notice that it gives us 421. If we change it to red, it's going to give us the sum of all of the red marbles. If we change it, let's say to green, it will give us the sum of the green marbles. And so the SUMIF function helps you to calculate the sum of just one element within a range. So it's based on one option. But let's say if we want to calculate the sum based on two different options that we could select. In this case, the card type and the color, rather than just the color of the marbles. What function can help us to find the total of, let's say, all of the silver Hyundai? In this case, we need to use something called the SUMIFS function. So let's type in equal SUMIFS. And then first we're going to select the sum range. So that's the range with the numbers in it. And then let's press comma. Next, criteria range 1. So the first criteria is the card type. And then criteria 1, that's going to be the information that we're going to put in cell E15. And then criteria range 2. So we need to select a range of values. And criteria 2 will be the color type. Now let's close the parentheses. So right now we have 0. So let's say if we want to find the total of all of the black Hondas. So let's type in Honda into card type and black into color, and we're going to get the answer. So it's going to be 150 plus 127, that gives us 277. Now let's calculate the sum total of all the silver Hyundais that we have. So here's the first one, it's 165. The second one is, let's see, 84. And the third one is 315. So that gives us a total of 564. And what you can do is you can basically highlight these cells. So if you go to the Home tab, and you could select the fill color option, and you could basically change the color of those cells. So let's change this to, let's say, yellow. And so you could see the cell that is of special interest in this worksheet. So let's say if we want to find the sum total of all of the blue Mazdas, we can do that here. So that's how you could use the SUMIF function and the SUMIFS function in Excel. Now let's talk about conditional formatting. So let's highlight these cells and notice this button at the bottom right. If you left click it, that's the quick analysis tool. And the first section is formatting. We can choose data bars. So you can see that yellow and red, they have the highest number. They have the largest blue data bar. A color scale, so green is the highest, red is the lowest. An icon set, greater than, top 10%, and so forth. You can even select different charts using this option. You can have a sum total, an average, a count, put in the sum on the right, and things like that. Another way in which you can access the conditional formatting feature is by clicking the Home tab and going to Conditional Formatting. So once again, you can choose data bars, but this time with different colors. You can choose color scales, icon sets, but a lot of different type of icon sets, as you can see here. But let's go to highlight cells, and let's go to between. But you know what? Let me just select the numbers. So I want to select the cells that are between, let's say, 115 and 170. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Custom Format, and then I'm going to make the text black. But the fill, I want to give the cells, let's say, a green color. So every cell that's between 115 and 170 has been highlighted with a green color. So that's how you can format cells with numbers. You can choose the between option, the greater than, or the less than option. Now, let's highlight certain text. So let's say text that contains, and let's go with blue. So all the marbles with a blue color, I'm going to give it a blue color. And so that's how you could use the conditional formatting feature in Excel. You can highlight certain cells based on the text that they contain or their numerical value. Now the next thing I want to talk about is data validation. Using that feature, you can allow certain numbers to be placed in a cell but not other numbers. For instance, let's go to data. Well, first let me give this cell a special color. So let's give it a yellow color. Now let's go to data and then data validation. So I'm going to go to settings, and we're going to select a whole number between, let's say, 10 and 20. Now let's go to input message. So whenever this cell is selected, I want to receive a message that says the following: enter a value between 10 and 20. And then let's say if a value that's not between 10 and 20 is entered, I'm gonna have a warning symbol. Actually, let's just put an information symbol that's going to come up, and the error message will be invalid entry. So now let's press OK. So anytime I highlight this cell, you can see the input message: enter a value between 10 and 20. So if I put 15, everything's okay. If I put 12, it's alright. If I put 10, it's alright. But let's say if I put a number outside of this range, let's say 27, then I get the error message: invalid entry. And so using the data validation, you can make sure that certain values are entered into a cell, blocking out other values. In this worksheet, we have the name of a few individuals, their income, email, phone number, and age. And sometimes we want to look up one of these aspects given the name of the individual. So let's type in name, income, email, phone, and age. So we're going to start with Sarah. Let's say if we want to look up her income. So you could use the VLOOKUP function to do so. There's a lot of other functions that you could use, but we're going to focus on this one. And so the lookup value will be whatever we decide to put in cell D8. The table array will be this information from A2 to E6. Now the column index number. Out of all the columns that we have selected, column A is the first column, column B is the second, column C is the third, column D is the fourth, column E is the fifth. So the income is the second column that is selected. Now for the range lookup, we have two options, true or false. I'm going to go with false for an exact match. And so if we have the name Sarah, we can see that the VLOOKUP function displays her income. Now the next thing we're going to consider is her email. So let's use the VLOOKUP function again. So the lookup value will still be based on cell D8. We're going to select the same table array. This time the column index number will be column 3 because that's where the email information is located. And we're going to choose false again for an exact match. And so we could see that her email was retrieved. Now let's do the same thing for her phone number. So everything is going to be the same except the column index number, which is now number 4. So we can see we have her number, and finally her age. So let's do this again. So this is going to be in column 5. And so we can see that she's 26 years old. Now, if we change the name to Jason, all of the information will be updated. We can see his income, 28,000, his email, his phone number, and his age. Now, sometimes it might be useful to turn this into a drop-down menu or a drop-down list. Now, you can do so by going to Data, Data Validation, and let's go to Settings. Let's select Lists, and then click this button. Now let's highlight these names and then press Enter and then OK. So notice that we have a drop-down list. So we can choose Lucy and her information will come up. Or we can select Richard and his information will be pulled from the database. Or we can select Thomas. And of course, if you want to, you can highlight that cell so it stands out from the rest. Now let's take this information, let's press Ctrl C, and let's paste it on a new worksheet. So Ctrl V, and let's zoom in. And then double click. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a table. So let's press Ctrl T and then select OK. So now we have a table. And what we're going to do at this point is create a data entry form where we can input information in the form and it's going to populate our table. So let's go to File, Options, and let's go to Customize Ribbon, and let's select Commands Not in the ribbon. And then let's scroll down and we're going to look for something called Form. Now select a new tab and then rename the new tab. Let's call it Data Entry. Press OK. Highlight New Group. Press Add and then press OK. So now we have this new tab called Data Entry. We're going to select it and then select Form. So now what we're going to do is press new. So let's put someone new. Let's say Karen, and let's say her income is 75,000. We're going to say her email is karen.j@hotmail.com, and let's say her number is 527-465-9137. And let's say her age is 32. And then after that, just press new. And notice that her information was entered into the database. And so that's how you can create a data entry form in Excel. Now here we have a file with a lot of data. As you can see, it's a big list. And here we have the name of the sales agent, the state that they're from, the region, the quarter, the category of insurance they're selling, and the revenue for any given month. Now let's say if we want to find the total revenue generated by John. One way in which we can do that is we can search for him using conditional formatting or the sum if function, and basically add up the sales for every month that he's been active. But now there are other ways in which you can do this, and whenever you have a large data file, it's helpful to use pivot tables because they could simplify the information that is in this massive table. So first we need to convert this to a table. So let's press Ctrl A to select everything in this table, and then let's press Ctrl T to create a table. Now once you've created the table, go to Insert and then Pivot Table. And you could simply press OK at this point, and it's going to create a new sheet, and on the right you can select certain fields. So I'm going to select Sales Agent and just the revenue. So this will give me the total revenue generated by each sales agent. So John has generated 710,000 in revenue. And if I want to, I can visually represent this information with a pivot chart. So if you go to Insert, Pivot Chart, you can make a column chart, you can make a line chart, which is not going to be helpful, but let's go with the bar chart. So we can press OK. And so here we have a bar chart showing the sales of each agent. So we can see that Lisa has the highest. Now in the new sheet, in sheet 3, I'm going to paste that information. But first, let's get rid of the grid lines. Now if we want to, we could change the background color of all the cells. So let's press Ctrl A. Well, what just happened here? Let's do that again. And let's change the background color. So let's make it black. And now I'm going to go back to sheet 2, copy, go back to sheet 3, Control, paste. So now I can paste this graph onto this sheet. Now let's select this graph, and if you want to, you can go to Insert and you can insert a slicer. So let's select Sales Agent, and notice that I can select certain individuals. So using the Control button, I can display the information of just some of the sales agents and not all of them. And so slicers help you to adjust what you see in your graph. So let's press the delete button and let's go back to our original sheet. So now let's create a new pivot table. So let's say if we want to summarize the sales by the state. So you can just select state and revenue, and you could move it, let's say, to columns. It's going to look different, but I'm just going to leave it in rows. And here we can basically change the value field settings from sum to count to average and things like that, but I'll leave it as a sum of revenue. Now for this, I'm going to create a map chart. So let's go to Insert, Pivot Chart, and this time let's select Map. So it looks like it's not going to work, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, Control C, and then Control V to paste it. And now I'm going to create a map chart. So here is our map chart. Let's move it here. And so let's go to Data Labels. Let's select more data label options. And I'm going to choose category name. And that's it. So now let's copy. And then let's paste it onto sheet 3. So now we have our map chart. Now let's create a new chart. So let's create a new pivot table. And this time, let's determine the sales by category. And so I'm going to create a pie chart, but let's make it a donut chart. Nah, I don't want that. Let's go with the 3D pie chart. And so this, I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to leave it the way it is, except with one exception. I'm going to put the data callout option on it. And then copy, and let's paste it here. And so basically this is an Excel dashboard. So this is a visual representation of our huge data file. Now let's go back to sheet 1 and let's make one more chart. So creating a new pivot table, we're going to determine the sales by the month. So the total sales of the month of March is 578,000. And now let's represent this data with a line chart. And then let's press copy, and then let's paste it. And so that's it for our dashboard, which is simply a visual representation of our data. And I'm going to stop the video here because that's all that I want to cover in this video. So that's it. Now you know how to do some basic stuff in Excel. Hopefully you found this video to be helpful, and thanks for watching.